the guys who were disappointed, and it starts with me because I was incredibly disappointed that Spencer Rattler was not drafted on day 2. I had almost talked you into it, did I not?
No.
I don't know. The 2 p.m. show, after the 6 quarterbacks go in the 12, I think you were like, oh my gosh, these guys might fly off in rounds 3 and 4, or 2 and 3, and it didn't.
No, I did not say round 2. I said maybe at the end of round 3.
Yeah, my bold prediction was that Spencer went in round 2, and Michael Pratt went in round 3.
And that was ching me.
0-2 in terms of the dollars going your way. I don't know if those were dollar bets. I hope they weren't. I think they were.
$10 bets.
Okay, so Spencer Rattler still out there. 3rd time, no quarterbacks drafted in rounds 2 or 3, going back to 83 and 94. Let me ask you this, because it feels like if you're not a first-round quarterback, once you start getting out of the first round, unless you just stumble upon goal, and I think I would still consider Will Levis a first rounder. He went 34th, so he was right there on the edge. But typically, second rounders and beyond don't work out. So maybe you're just waiting till rounds 4 and 5 to get the quarterbacks and addressing other needs.
Yeah, because most of those guys are probably going to be backups. I think we even saw that last year with Aiden O'Connell, the Fresno State Hainer, who went to the New Orleans Saints. So those are a lot of those, the kid from Georgia, Bennett, that went to the LA Rams. So a lot of those guys did not go until day 3 in the draft.
All right. So I'm hesitating because does it make sense for the Giants or the Raiders to draft a Spencer Rattler or Michael Pratt, or is it just going to be a team that needs a developmental quarterback? And I did Pittsburgh radio on Friday before day 2 started, and the host asked me, do you take Spencer Rattler if he's there in the 4th round in Pittsburgh? I don't think you do, but those are the sorts of questions you're asking once you're not considering these players as going to be starters in year 2 or 3.
Unless you're going to redshirt Spencer Rattler or just keep him as a 3rd quarterback, because I don't know what's going to happen with Russell Wilson there next year. I don't know what's going to happen with Justin Fields next year. So if you want to stack another one, a young guy to learn the system, maybe that's a good spot for him.
Okay. Also, Jordan Travis is still out there. We expected that because of the injury. Joe Milton, I don't know if I said this on the podcast. Hopefully not in retrospect, but I thought maybe that bold prediction, maybe he goes in round 3 because he's overdrafted.
I hope I bet $1 on that one too.
Yes, no, I'm just losing money left and right. And let's see. So I'll read you some names. You tell me if you think they get drafted on day 3. Joe Milton has to get drafted, right?
I think maybe someone takes a swing at him in a 6th or 7th round. Okay. And the only reason I'm saying that is because this was such a top-heavy draft, and there was only 58 underclassmen that came out this year, the lowest in over a decade. So some of these guys, someone has to get drafted. So these guys that may have normally been a college free agent, because the lack of depth, I think, especially in the 6th and 7th rounds, you're going to see guys get drafted.
Notre Dame, Sam Hartman.
Free agent.
Our guy, we liked him a lot. Gus Bradley's son, Carter Bradley, out of South Alabama.
Yeah, free agent.
Is he better than Tyson Bagent?
I don't know if he's athletic, but he did throw a nice ball. Yeah. The first time I had exposure to him was down at the Senior Bowl, and I thought he had a great week down there.
And to be fair, Tyson Bagent was undrafted. Had to start the games. He did really well. And then finally, I'll ask you about Devin Leary out of Kentucky by way of NC State.
Free agent.
All right. I'm saying that here's a $1 bet, Devo. Out of Sam Hartman, Carter Bradley, Devin Leary, I mean, there's no way 2 get drafted. Will you take the bet if I say 1 gets drafted?
Well, whatever. That makes you happy. It's like, what time is it? It's 1 a.m. Yeah. I usually go to bed at 9:30. So whatever makes you beat me down. I'll do whatever you want to do.
All right. One of those gets drafted. I'm going to get in the $1. If none get drafted, then I'm just quitting. All right. Let's look at the running backs. The second latest, the first running back came off the board. And that, of course, was the young man out of Texas.
Jonathan Brooks.
Jonathan Brooks. Thank you. I'm also struggling at 1 a.m. Surprised at that? We talked a little bit about it. He went pick 46 overall. That felt about right because of the ACL injury.
Yeah, and he may have went earlier if he didn't have that ACL, because he was the most gifted running back out of this class. Not as good as last year. There was no Jahmyr Gibbs. There was no Bijan Robinson. So, we were talking about it earlier. Is it because the running backs are devalued, or just the talent level of these running backs coming out in the draft this year?
All right, let's go through these guys. So they're losers just because of
not losers.
The
disappointed.
The overall position group is disappointed that they didn't get drafted higher. They're all winners in our books. So only 4 have been drafted through 3 rounds. Debo actually did the hard work on the rundown. I still didn't read it. Jonathan Brooks at 46, as you noted, to the Panthers. Trey Benson, 66 to the Cardinals. Blake Corum, 83 to the Rams. We talked about that because of the Michigan connection. And Marshawn Lloyd, who's a fun player out of USC, He went 88 to the Packers. All right, so here's a little game here, Rick. You tell me who's going to be the most productive of this group. Jonathan Brooks is a huge help in Carolina.
When he's healthy.
When he's healthy, but adding something appearing to be close to explosiveness, which was lacking obviously last year. Trey Benson's going to be fun in Arizona. It certainly feels like Blake Corum is going to be sharing carries with Kyron Williams, and then Marshawn Lloyd will be sharing carries. AJ Dillon's in the last year of his deal. They just got Josh Jacobs. Thank you. Who's going to be the most productive by the end of the 2024 season?
I'm going to say Jonathan Brooks.
And it may be the case, I think November, maybe he tore his ACL, so maybe he's a late starter in the fall, but maybe he gets going 12 months after the injury.
Yeah, and I just think with Carolina hiring David Canales, the offensive coach, as their head coach, he's going to want to run the ball because that's going to be able to set up play action and hopefully help Bryce Young have a better sophomore year than he did his freshman year.
Oh, boy. If he has a worse, we're going to be talking about quarterbacks, and that's not even a joke. And me don't want that because Pete Prisco remains a nemesis. All right, another group of young men who are disappointed, except for the three that got drafted, the tight end group. Brock Bowers, of course, won the first round at 13. We talked about that yesterday and how that made sense or didn't make sense if you're the Raiders. Great player. Is the fit a good one? We'll find out. Then at pick 53, we talked earlier about Ben Sinnott. You loved Ben Sinnott for a while. You talked me into him. We talked to him at the Combine. He's a great young man, had a great Senior Bowl, told teams that he compared his game to Sam Laporta. And do you see that, or do you laugh at him or you laugh at me with my comps?
No, I kind of even mentioned that. I said a poor man Sam Laporta back in the fall just because he can play multiple positions. He can line up at H-back. He can line up at fullback. He can line up as a traditional Y. He gives good effort as a blocker. He's not over-dominant. He is a better athlete than people anticipate. He can catch the ball. He has some run after catch. So I think he's just a utility knife that a lot of offensive coordinators, and now he's with the Commanders, that Cliff Kingsbury will be able to use.
And then Tip Ryman went off the board.
That was a little surprising.
Very surprising. I just checked. I had a 5th-round grade on him, and I liked his tape, but I didn't like it as much as some of the other players. The Cardinals took him there. And now they also have their former 2nd-round pick, Trey McBride, there. Elijah Higgins is also on the roster. He moved from tight end to tight end from wide receiver at Stanford, and he plays more like a tight end. But so they've upgraded the offense. Listen, man, Trey Benson, Marvin Harrison Jr., we talked about Isaiah Adams, the guard that's probably going to have an opportunity to start. And then Tip Ryman. They're not messing around in a division where you need to be able to score points.
Yeah, no, I thought they've done a good job, and Monty Ossenford has done a great job starting to assemble that roster.
So Tip is a good blocking tight end, but some of the guys who are also out there, I've been talking up Theo Johnson for a while out of Penn State. Jatavian Sanders is still there. I'm surprised Kate Stover didn't make his way into the day 2.
Yeah, because I thought he had the ability to run block. He improved as a pass catcher, improved as a route runner. Remember, he was a linebacker that was converted to tight end. Has played there, I think, the last 2 years at Ohio State. So I still think this kid is learning the position, has a lot of upside. I thought for sure that he would have went in either 2nd or 3rd round today.
And you felt pretty good about TCU's Jared Wiley going on day 2?
Who?
Jared Wiley. You like Jared Wiley?
Oh, yeah, the TCU. Yeah. Long, athletic kid, can make plays in the passing game, gives effort, needs to get stronger as a run blocker. But I think that someone's going to get a pretty good tight end on tomorrow, on Saturday, although today is Saturday.
And sometimes it's hard to, from the media evaluation perspective, I want to hear what you say about this. It's hard to tell who these tight ends are because a lot of times they aren't asked to do a lot. I mean, look at Sam Laporta. So maybe it's a situation where the Cardinals saw something that fits what the offense they want to do, and maybe other teams didn't. Is that hard to figure out who these tight ends are sometimes?
Well, sometimes it may be scheme fit. So maybe they were looking specifically for a run blocker, because they have McBride, who's turned out to be a pretty good receiver. Was very good when he came out of Colorado State. So I think that they were looking for a run blocker, and he may be the best run blocker of the guys that we just talked about.
And that's a good point. And he is a good run blocker. And if that is in fact the direction they were going, there was no way Jatavian Sanders was going to be their guy. No disrespect to Jatavian, we love him, but run blocking, that's where he's going to have to improve. Down the field, he's pretty good. All right, another team that made some curious selections. Michael Penix Jr., we talked about that. It's not about Michael Penix Jr. It's the fit in Atlanta. We talked about Rook Ahorohoro. You certainly made the case for why it's not necessarily a surprise that he went as high as he did.
Except it was a surprise he went ahead of Johnny Newton.
That was, in fact, a surprise. Maybe Johnny Newton's foot was an issue. And then at pick 74, they get Braylon Trice. That actually feels like value. Here's my question. If you just sort of reshuffled where you took the players in this draft, so, you take Byron Murphy or Dallas Turner or whomever, and I later learned earlier today, after round 1, that the Falcons were never in the Dallas Turner business at 8. I wish I'd known that before when I did my final mock draft, but I found that out after the fact. But it feels like if you reordered these and maybe take out the Michael Penix Jr. situation, this team could be a little better than they are right now.
Yeah, well, I thought they did great in the offseason because they built a roster to compete and potentially win the NFC South, which is one of the weaker divisions in the NFL. So getting Kirk Cousins, getting Moore from Arizona, getting Mooney from Chicago, they built this come in and compete now. So it was a little peculiar on how they approached this draft because I think there were some better players on there that could have made an immediate impact. That could really have maybe not only helped them win the NFC South, but even advance in the playoffs.
Yeah, so we'll see. Maybe this ends up being a home run. Maybe Michael Penix Jr. goes to the Hall of Fame. But Braylon Trice, we liked his tape a lot, and we talked earlier in the pre-draft, pre-day 2 conversation. I thought maybe he was going to slip to round 3. You thought he had some second-round value. So this it's a good pick if it works out and it fills a need.
Well, there's no question he's going to play with his hair on fire. This is a guy that comes humming off the edge. May not be as athletic as some of the other edge rushers that went earlier than him, but the effort and energy is there. And when you watch him on tape, a lot of his sack production comes off second effort, not off him initially beating an offensive tackle.
Another team that made one curious selection. I understand the Caden Wallace pick, the right tackle out of Penn State. I talked about him last week before the draft. He was one of the players that I liked. You liked him a little less. He's going to have a chance to start right away because they need help at offensive tackle. They do have Michael Onwenu out there. Let's see what they do with him. Maybe they move him inside. They have like 55 guards on the roster, it feels like. Either way, the other pick that I want to focus on is they traded out of pick 34, I believe it was, the Patriots did. Moved down 3 spots to get Jalen Polk with our guy Ladd McConkey sitting there. They play different positions. I understand that. Jalen Reagor's now on the roster. They have KJ Osborne. They have Kendrick Bourne. They have Demario Douglas. So maybe this fits a different role as on the outside. But if you and I have talked about this, Ladd McConkey feels like a pretty easy choice.
Yeah, but even was A.D. Mitchell still on the board at the time?
Yeah.
So to me, I would have probably looked at both of those two before I went with Jalen Polk.
Yeah, maybe A.D. fell. This is interesting. I said this to Debo.
In your staff meeting that I'm never included in?
Yeah. Like you were eating the almonds.
Rick, just show up and just start talking on the podcast.
The almonds that still has given Debo nightmares watching you eat those things. But I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that at the end of the day, A.D. Mitchell ended up going to the Indianapolis Colts, right?
Yep.
He did. And I haven't had a chance to listen to all of it, but we saw on social media, Chris Ballard gave what appears to be an impassioned response as to why A.D. Mitchell reportedly fell and why the Colts ended up taking him. So who knows at this point? If they gave him a clean bill of health and there's nothing there, good for the Colts and good for Chris Ballard, and hopefully AD can prove people wrong. But to your point, if there's nothing off field to be concerned about, that's another name that could have been a potential.
And that's the one thing we don't know. We don't know the off field. We don't know all the medical information. We don't know all the tests that they've taken through this pre-draft process. So basically, when we're watching, we're just grading off of what we see on tape.
Exactly. All right. The Titans are also on the list just because T'Vondre Sweat went so high, not because he's not a good player. The 2-down issue is the pass rusher issues you've talked about. And also he went relatively high among the defensive line group. But to your point, if Rand McCarthon and Brian Callahan were fine with it, who are we to say whether it's going to work out or not?
No. And then we'll do a redraft, 3 years from now?
It'll be the first player taken.
Yeah.
Right. And
you'll do a redraft.
And then I will get absolutely demolished on social media because people do not like my redrafts. All right.
Do they even like your pre-drafts? The mock drafts?
Better, apparently, and I told Debo to pencil in this summer. We're going to do a redraft Brandon Ayuk versus CeeDee Lamb because people are killing me for that one. And
you would take Ayuk over CeeDee Lamb?
Here's why. Because when they drafted Ricky Pearsall, your favorite player in the world, the first thing Brandon Ayuk did, according to Adam Schefter, is text his general manager and head coach and say, that is a fire pick, and fire means good. They were teammates at Arizona State. So he's a team player.
That's good.
I thought it was going to say, trade me now. It went the exact opposite direction. So he wants to win, and I'm filibustering because Debo wants me to ask you the tough questions. Here's what it reads. Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr., does that make sense for the Lions?
It does. Absolutely makes sense.
I think it does, right?
Yeah. No, because they had lost Cam Sutton.
Yep.
Because of the issues he had off the field, so they had to let him go. Emmanuel Mosley, who they signed last year, has 2 ACLs. They needed to replenish that secondary. Gardner Johnson went back to Philadelphia, so they have Kirby Joseph coming back at safety. But these two guys, I think, now they traded for Carlton Davis,
yes,
I believe,
sir.
from Tampa Bay, which will give them a vet presence. I think Terrion Arnold is going to be a similar impact that Brian Branch had because he ran 4.51, but plays much faster than that, can play inside or outside. And I think Rakestraw also has position flexibility. May not get on the field right away, but we've talked about it. Witherspoon-like attitude and way he hits and is a tone setter on the defense. A typical Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell draft pick. Guys that just love to play football, guys that are accountable. And I think both these guys fit that bill.
And last year, don't forget, I mean, why would you forget? But for people listening or watching, we were like, okay, what are the Lions doing? They didn't draft for their needs in the first round. All they did was get
good football players.
The running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, the linebacker, Jack Campbell, and then Brian Branch they got in the second round, first round value. That worked out pretty well.
And Laporta, don't forget.
Sam Laporta, oh yeah. Forgot about him. Also a second round pick. I mean, golly, there's no way Brad Holmes isn't doing a podcast in 2 years with all those picks. He's just crushing it. All right.